It's time for another mini lecture. Today we're going to hit on chapter 3, looking at infancy and toddlerhood, and specifically we're going to look at Piaget's theory of cognitive development. Now, his theory of cognitive development is one of the most essential ideas in developmental psychology, as it describes how children reach intellectual growth by going through different stages. And so as we go through this lecture, we're going to look at the different stages along with a couple key terms that he used and identified to explain how this cognitive learning is happening. Oops. All right, so he believed that children continuously are trying to make sense of their world. He had coined these terms of schema, assimilation, and accommodation. Schema is the framework for actually organizing information. I like to think of that as like folders that we stick things in to keep things organized. Assimilation is when we fit new information into an existing schema. So we've already got a folder for it and we're putting new information into that. And accommodation is when we expand that schema to incorporate new information that's coming in. So I've got a little visual that helps to kind of illustrate this. So you can see in the top part of this diagram, you've got a child with its mom, and the child has a schema, right? A folder that says, you know, these are mammals, and he's got in that folder a horse and a pig. And then he's introduced to zebra, and he's like, wait, how does a zebra fit in? And his mom says a zebra is a mammal. And that child's able to assimilate that information and put the zebra in with the mammals, right? As she describes what the characteristics of mammals are. Now down below we have accommodation. And in this diagram, you can see this child, sees that, okay, this is an animal, a horse. A horse has 4 legs, it has a tail, it has this long face. He sees a zebra, and of course it meets all those criteria that he had for horse. And until the mom says, actually, that's a zebra. The child then has to accommodate that information and realize that, oh, those are actually not characteristics always for zebras, right? Zebras have stripes and other distinguishing characteristics. And so they essentially uses that schema of horses and it accommodates that new information of what is now a zebra. So Piaget has these sensory motor stages, and I have an actual table that you can view in a couple slides, but he broke the sensory motor stage, which again covers infancy and toddlerhood, and he talked about specific things that children are doing during these different time periods. So it's the coordination of secondary circular reactions between 8 and 12 months, where children are combining actions to achieve these different goals. So we have tertiary reactions, which happen between 12 and 18 months. This is when children, especially toddlers, are exploring the world in a trial and error manner, and the beginning of representational thought. They can use symbols or ideas to represent something else, right? So we see, they're reading a picture book, they can identify an animal, name the animal. They can also begin to make believe around these different materials and ideas. Here's that table. The sub-stages are here. There's 6 of them, reflexes all the way down to representational thought that we just covered. And that's one of the actual criticisms around Piaget. You can see that these windows are pretty tight, 0 to 1, 1 to 4, 4 to 8 months. And one of the criticisms around Piaget is that all children maybe don't, while they do experience these stages, the rigidity of the months, the specific months, has been criticized because not all children, meet those stages at the exact same time. All right, so something to think about. Again, Piaget focused on individual cognitive processes. There's so many, valid points to Piaget's theory, but there's also criticisms. And I think, as we go through the different theorists that have impacted child development, there's significant contributions, but the theories have also been studied and examined and found to have some criticisms as well, and that's okay. It helps us to better understand, again, how children are developing in our day. So Piaget stressed that toddlers develop knowledge independently through direct environmental interactions, and that method was criticized for downplaying social interactions and language exposure and learning. And in last lecture, we talked about Vygotsky, right? When Vygotsky's theory came around, he did kind of account for this culture and social norms that hadn't been accounted for with Piaget's theory. And so that's still a criticism that exists around Piaget's theory. Secondly, Piaget's stages as fixed and irreversible. His model of cognitive development as discrete, stable phases has been criticized, like I mentioned earlier. He believed that everything was very sequential and predefined, where each step provided the groundwork for the next. And unfortunately, life is just not quite that precise. It's a lot more fluid. So his rigidity means that development is permanent and that regression or skipping phases is impossible, which we know is not accurate. Lastly, there's this lack of consideration for gender differences in cognitive development. So Piaget's phases that we talked about, or those stages, lack of gender difference in cognitive development, has been criticized because he really didn't address those gender differences in cognitive maturation patterns. So we do know that gender is a part of development, right? And in connection also intersecting with social norms, and that was not accounted for in his research. So those are just a few of the criticisms. Obviously, much of his theory still stands and is relevant, and we use it actively, in the understanding of children's development over time. Thanks.